topics. We're going to talk about protecting yourself with good body mechanics and protecting your patients when we're using emergency, urgent, and non-emergent moves. Protecting yourself with good body mechanics. Uh, Protecting yourself, body mechanics, the proper use of body to prevent injuries and facilitate lifting and moving. That's the definition of body mechanics. We should consider the following before we start lifting. The object, what's it weigh? What's its shape? Can we lift this? We have to know our limitations. How much weight can I lift? Can I lift this safely? Fortunately for us, we work in teams, pairs of twos on an ambulance. So uh, once we start to lift the patient, we have to have good communications. We have to plan and communicate with your partner before lifting your patient. Rules for lifting. You're going to position your feet properly, which is usually shoulder width apart. We're going to lift with our legs, right? We're never going to lift with our back. We use our legs. Strongest muscles in our body is our quadriceps and our legs. We're never going to turn or twist, if avoidable. We're going to try to stay in line. And we're not going to compress while lifting with one hand, excuse me. We're going to keep weight as close to the body, right? We want it right next to our body. We don't want it way out in front of us because it changes our all our points, and it's just not good. We want it as close to our body as we can get it. And this is important. We're going to use stair chairs when we're carrying patients on stairs, whenever possible. Especially with today's cots being power cots, weighing more, and the patient's getting heavier. If we can take them down the stairs safely, we're going to use a stair chair. Here's a good example of EMTs using a stair chair. This is the power lift and power grip, as you can see in the pictures. The power lift, he's using his legs, keeping his back in line. The power grip, palms are up, about shoulder width apart. When we're reaching, we're going to keep our back in a locked in position. We're going to try to stay straight in line. We're going to avoid any twisting while reaching. We're going to avoid reaching more than 20 inches in front of our body. We want to try to keep that, again, close to our center mass. We're going to avoid prolonged reaching for strenuous efforts when strenuous efforts is required. So if it's a really heavy object, we're not going to try to reach out to that. We're going to get closer to it if we have to. When pulling and pushing, we'd rather push than pull. You're going to do this whenever possible. Keep your back in locked position. Again, we're going to keep line of pull through the center of the body. So we're not going to be off to the side pulling. We're going to be pulling back towards the center of the body. And we're going to keep that weight as close as we can. If the weight is below our waist, you should push or pull from a kneeling position, right? Which means we're not going to be bent over pulling or pushing. We're going to kneel down and push them. Avoid pushing or pulling overhead. That's pretty self-explanatory. We don't want to be stretched out overhead, pushing or pulling, because we have very little control at that point. Keep your elbows bent and arms close to the side. That's going to keep that weight close to you and center mass. Let's start talking about, excuse me, we're going to start talking about protecting your patient using emergent, urgent, non-emergent moves. Emergent moves. There are situations when a scene is hazardous. For example, like a car on fire, building about ready to collapse, hazardous material sometimes. So sometimes we have to do these emergent moves. If the care of a life-threatening condition requires you to reposition, this means we have to move the patient so we can take care of them. You must reach out, or if you have to reach other patients, sometimes we have to do an emergency move to get one patient out of the way so we get to another. This would be like maybe a less severe injured patient. We move out of the way so we can get to our more severely or more needed tentative patient at the time. Here they're showing a clothing drag. As you can see, this drag is used, especially if we are worried about like a C-spine or an injury to the head, neck, or back, and we want to try to protect that a little bit, we can use this method, and we're going to kind of keep him all in line as we drag. As you can see, he's grabbing the patient by his shirt or by the neck area. Be careful not to pull too close to the neck and strangulate your patient. This is an incline drag. You're always going to go head first when you're going down the stairs or up the stairs. This is a fireman's drag. This we don't use a whole lot in EMS, but you can use. It's nice to know. You tie the patient's wrists together and you slip their arms around your head and you just walk out on your hands and knees, just as the picture shows. Blanket drag. Gather half the blanket material up against the patient's side, roll the patient towards the knees, place the blanket under the patient, and gently roll the patient onto the blanket. Now you can drag the patient using the blanket to drag them. This is one rescue assist. This is if your patient has maybe got like one injured leg or something that they can't bear a whole lot of weight on that leg, but you can help them. And again, here's a 2 rescuer. This is more ideal than 1, but sometimes you have multiple patients and you have to have 1 rescuer. But if not, you got 2, and this is more ideal. An urgent move is a situation that requires treatment that can be performed only if the patient is moved. Factors at the scene can cause the patient's decline, right? So this is something that is important that we move them, but it's not emergent. Like if we don't move them, the car's going to explode and it's going to blow up. We're going to may have to move the patient quicker than what we normal to treat a life-threatening injury. Usually involve moving the patient to a backboard. Non-emergent moves are not immediate life threats, so we have time to assess the patient, treat, and move them in a normal way. We take all required precautions not to aggravate an existing condition. So if they've got a broken ankle, we're not going to have them bear weight on that ankle and stuff like that. Patient carrying devices, stretchers. That's our main source of moving patients from residence to ambulance to hospital, and so forth. So this is our main device that we use. There are 3 different types of stretchers. We have powered stretchers, which we refer to stretchers as cots. You're going to hear me say power cot or manual cot. That is the stretcher. So we have power cots, which is what the name implies. There's a push button and it's got a motor on it and it'll lift and lower on its own. It's got a power source, battery operated usually. Most ambulance service today will use power cots. The big drawback to the power cots is all this mechanism of this, the mechanics of this creates weight. It adds more weight to the stretcher. So a power stretcher is going to weigh more than the next one, which is a manual stretcher. Manual means you physically have to pull handles, lift and lower the cot. So it is a lighter weight cot, so it doesn't weigh as much, but it is, like I said, it's non-powered, so you are the power source. Then there's another one called a bariatric stretcher, and these are used for our obese patients. Some rated carrying patients of 800 pounds or more. Most of your power stretchers now are rated to like 750 pounds, 650 pounds. It just depends on the manufacturer of the stretcher. So you have to know what your weight limit is on your stretchers. This is a powered stretcher, as you can see. If you see the gentleman at the feet, right where his hands are, you can see like the battery pack, and on where his right hand would be the buttons or the function to raise and lower the cot. Power cots are really nice. They were designed to help save the EMT's back. So they are really nice and very useful. This is a powered stretcher made by Furno. This is a very unique design they have, that the legs are all independent and you can use them all independently, and it's really nice. This is a bariatric setup. As you can tell with the bariatrics, the cots are usually lower to the ground and they have extension handles, so you're not very high up. And most of them will come with like some sort of like ramp system like you have here, and some even have a winch system, which this one does. if you look at the EMT at the top or in the back of the ambulance, in his left hand, he's holding the controls to the winch, which will run a cable down and hook to the cot, and it'll pull it up into the ambulance. Other devices we can use, stair chairs, very useful when we're using, when we have stairs. It's my policy to try to use a stair chair when we have more than one stair. Like, for example, we pull up to a residence and they have a whole bunch of steps on the outside of their house, and it's easier if the patient's able to sit, just to take a stair chair in the house, push the patient in the stair chair, and maneuver them safely down the stairs instead of trying to put them on this power cot, which weighs roughly 225 pounds without a monitor and all this other accessories, and then putting a 200-pound patient on and taking this 450 to 500-pound setup down the steps. So it's just safer for you and the patient to use a stair chair. But sometimes we're going to have to use a spine board to carry a patient. There are two different ones. There's a short one, which is rarely used in EMS anymore. We used to use them for like a seated position in a car when we'd go to a car wreck, but now we have a KED system, or a KED, which is a Kendrick's extrication device, which we'll talk later in the trauma sections. So we use that instead of long spine boards. We don't just use them anymore. But a short spine board, I'm sorry. A long spine board, however, is the primary for removing patients from vehicles when neck and spinal injuries are suspected. You can also use it to carry a patient down out of the house if you can't get a stretcher in. They're really good for using for securing a hip fracture. If you have like an elderly patient who fell and possibly fractured their hip, we'll secure that hip with either a blanket or like a pelvic sling, and then sometimes we'll put them on a long spine board to move them to the cot. So they're a good source for that. Here's a nice picture of a stair chair. This is a really nice one. I can't really tell, but I think it may have the tracks in the back. If you have one that's got the tracks in the back, that's even better. As you can see, that the patient will be in a seated position. There are straps to secure them. Handles on the top and the bottom there extend, and it's on wheels. So stair chairs are really nice, and it's really good to practice with ones that you are using in your service. In a classroom setting, we will play with these quite often. Here's a picture of long spine boards. They are mainly plastic or fiberglass now. When they first came out, they were plywood and they were heavy. Now they're pretty lightweight, lots of handholds so lots of people can carry, lots of places for straps to be secured. Other types of stretchers are portable stretchers, scoop stretchers, basket stretchers, flexible stretchers, and vacuum stretchers or mattresses. And there's pictures of each coming up. Here's a scoop stretcher. As you can see at the top and bottom, this will split in half, and you can go underneath a patient without ever having to move the patient. And then you can secure them. And then you can use this as a long spine board. So this is a pretty handy little tool to have. This is a basket stretcher. Where they come in handy is like when you have wilderness rescues, or you have a patient, like, for example, a deer hunter who would fall out of a tree stand and he's way back into the woods. You can put the patient in this. This is actually can be used as a long spine board as well. So you can secure his spinal column with this device. And then it's got lots of handles so lots of people can grab a hold and carry. There are, with the ATVs or the side-by-sides now, they do make devices that go in the bed of the ATVs or the side-by-sides to where you can put a scoop basket in and transport your patient out safely that way. This is a flexible stretcher. When I think of flexible stretchers, I think of the old Army cots. You see, like, even today on football fields and stuff like that, you see that's kind of what a flexible stretcher is. This will break in half If you look in the middle, it's got pivot points in the middle, and it will fold in half for easy storage. This is not used for a long spine board, however, so you can put your patient on a long spine board and then secure them to this stretcher and then carry them to wherever your wheeled stretcher is at. This is a vacuum mattress. I haven't seen this personally used a lot in the field in our area, but what happens is you put your patient on this and you take the little pump and you suck out the air and it forms around the patient. So it's good. You can use this as a spinal immobilization device as well. And here you see the EMT. He's using a little pump to suck or vacuum out the air. So when the patient is placed on the device and air is withdrawn, the mattress becomes rigid and confirming, automatically padding the voids. All right, how are we going to move our patients? Patients with suspected spinal injuries. We're going to immobilize the head, neck, and spine before moving. So in order to do that, we're going to first perform manual stabilization, which means the EMT will stand and hold the head in place. Then we'll place a rigid C-collar or cervical collar, and that restricts the motion of the head and neck. Well, we just skipped that. Okay. Patients with no spinal injuries, we can use extremity lifts used to carry a patient to a stretcher or stair chair. Can be used to lift the patient from the ground or from a sitting position. And I believe there's pictures coming up. Right here is an extremity lift, right? So you can pick them up and carry them to the stretcher. This is a really good lift, especially if they're sitting in like a recliner or on a couch or in a bed even. This is a good carry to use. Patient with no suspected injury, you can use the direct ground lift, lifted from the ground to the stretcher, and we have pictures as well. As you can see here, it takes 2 EMTs, and if you read the below, you set your stretcher to the lowest position, place the opposite of the patient. The EMT faces the patient, droops to one knee, drops to one knee, and places the patient's arms on the patient's chest, right? As you can see, they put their arms underneath them, supporting the neck and head and neck. They're both close to the waist and the one around the knees. And then they're just going to roll them up to their knees and then go to a standing position. And then you're going to place your patient onto the stretcher and secure them with straps. There's also the draw sheet method, which we use all the time in EMS, and a direct carry method. Here's the draw sheet method, moving them this is from hospital bed to stretcher. We can use it coming at home. You can use it at nursing facilities to go from bed to stretcher. This is the recovery position. This is if we got a patient who is possibly pregnant or may not be totally responsive and worried about the airway or aspiration or the vomiting, we're going to put them in a recovery position, usually on the left side, because most ambulances are set up to either be center load or offset load, which means they'll be against the wall. And if the patient's on the left side, they'll be facing the EMT in the back. Positioning for shock. If a patient is believed to be in shock, we're going to put them in supine position. Do not lower the head and do not raise the legs. Transferring a patient to a hospital stretcher. When you arrive at the hospital, you'll have to move the patient right from the ambulance, from our stretcher to the hospital bed or stretcher. So we're going to use a modified draw sheet, just like we took them from their bed and put them on the stretcher or the cot. You can see here they've got the stretcher at the same height as the bed. You're going to get plenty of help because the hospital's usually got plenty of people there, so you're going to get help. You're going to grab the sheet below the patient, and then someone is going to count, and you're going to move them from your stretcher to the bed as one unit, all one thing. Try not to do a jerking motion. You're going to just be a smooth, fluid motion from the cot to the bed. Okay, This was a pretty quick chapter. Let's review a little bit. The process of lifting and moving a patient is a task that requires planning, proper equipment, and careful attention to body mechanics to prevent injury to you and the patient, right? You go to pick a patient up, and the patient, you weren't ready for it, you didn't communicate well, you pick up before your partner does, you may get the patient off the floor, you may hurt your back, drop your patient, so that's not good. So good communication, good proper lifting techniques is important. The most important rule of lifting is to lift with your legs, right? We want to lift with our legs, not our back. Our legs are very strong, strongest muscles in our body. Keep your feet shoulder width apart and keep your knees bent. Rules for lifting are for patients as well as equipment. So not only do we use this rule for lifting our patients, but for lifting our cot or any of our heavy equipment, we use follow the same rules. Emergency moves are those that may aggravate spinal injuries and therefore are reserved for life-threatening situations. That's a very valid point. If this is an emergency move, we are not securing C-spine prior to moving, so it could aggravate spinal injuries. But if we don't move them at this time, they will die. So we have to weigh that decision. Do we move them now and possibly aggravate an injury? Or if we leave them here and this car explodes, then it doesn't matter if we aggravate an injury. Urgent moves are used when the patient must be moved quickly, but there is time to provide quick temporary consideration towards preventing or aggravating spinal injury. So we have to move the patient, but we have time to, put a C-collar on and move them to a backboard. Non-emergent moves are normally ways of moving the patient to the stretcher after performing a complete on-scene assessment and restricting movement of the spine when necessary. So these are most of our moves are going to be non-emergent moves. So examples of them are like the patient carry, two-person carry, the draw sheet, the drags, all those. Positioning the patient for transport should be taken into account if the patient's comfort, medical needs, and safety. Right. So we're going to consider all these before we load the patient onto the cot, and once we get them there, how are we going to position them? Remember the importance of correct lifting and moving techniques on every call. Protect your patient and protect yourself from injury to maintain a long and positive EMS experience, right? You get injured, that could be a career injury for EMS. You hurt your back, and that could be it. It could be done, right? So if you do proper lifting techniques and moving techniques, hopefully we help to minimize you or your patient getting hurt. Proper lifting techniques is important. Wellness strategy, biomechanics, and rules of lifting help prevent injuries. Many different patient carry devices exist. To reiterate some of those, like stair chairs, flexible stretchers, scoop stretchers, basket stretchers, vacuum mattresses, and long spine boards. There are others out there, things called like mega movers, which kind of look like tarps with handles so that a lot of people can help carry. These are for patients that don't have spinal injuries, but we need to carry them out. Choose the correct device based upon the particular patient and the needs of the particular movement, right? So it's going to be individually based. Use proper techniques to move a patient onto patient carrying devices and position them for transport based upon their condition, right? So if we have a semi-conscious or unconscious patient, it may be better to transport them in the recumbent or on their side to protect the airway in case they vomit, stuff like that.